Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of market forces, supply and demand, the capitalist system and so on. Now, the reality is that hardly any of the Western economies have much in the way of capitalism and free market and supply and demand and market forces. Very little of that exists anymore. Everything is almost everything is rigged and set up and pre-planned and pre-arranged by the globalists, the globalist cabal. Now, whether you say, well, that's the big industrial giants, or the big pharmaceutical, or it's big finance, it doesn't really matter. But it's that they want market forces only if it suits them. Only if it suits them. If the market forces of any description don't suit them, they don't want them. So it's a very one-way street on market forces. So let's do a bit of a dive into that now. Recently in Australia, there's been the price of green vegetables, broccoli and zucchini, all that sort of stuff. Just the green vegetables has been unusually high, and so I did a little bit of research on it, and apparently there's been the weather has been unfavourable and this, that, and the next thing. So the argument is that, well, because the weather was there's less product in the market, the demand is high, supply and demand, the market forces are the invisible hand of market forces, such as the propaganda is going around. This, of course, is absolute and utter nonsense. The price being offered by, there's only a few conduits to the consumer that the farmers in Australia have. And so they're being told, no, the price we're prepared to pay for your your apples or your broccoli or something, whatever, the price we're prepared to pay is X. And the farmers say, well, it's costing us $1 a pound to grow this stuff, and you want to offer us 50 cents a pound to buy it. So it's cheaper if I go and mulch it and plow it back into the soil, because then I've got a tax write-off, and this. So the economics of it are that I'm simplifying the thing a bit here, but the economics are that the big, in my view, this is my opinion, the big chains have played a pivotal role in bringing about the shortage. They then claim that they've got the hide, the chutzpah, to claim that what's market forces beyond our control. We've got nothing to do with it. It's the market decides. I mean, what a fucking load of bullshit. So this artificial shortage has been created, so they now want to charge $6-7 a pound for broccoli and this sort of thing. So or other green vegetables, and so no one buys the product. It's too expensive. I mean, unless you really got to have it, people won't buy it. So then, rather than reduce the price, they have to throw it out, and it gets it gets thrown into the garbage and spoils and wastes, or they keep it in refrigeration for too long, so it tastes like a piece of wood. And on it goes. But the material point here is that in trying to rig the market and rig their profits, they end up, or rigging their profits more to the point, they end up interfering with whatever market forces may exist. And then once market forces do sort of kick in, they then try and bypass those just by, bringing out their edicts, their centrally planned, the Central Bureau of Planning, deciding what they will pay and won't pay for things, and so on. Now, they're doing this, of course, to meet their pre-planned, which are done years in advance, or a year in advance, or months, of their pre-planned profit objectives. And so the weather and the farmer and the product, everything has to bend around what their centrally planned bureaucratic profit objective sort of equations have been. And if it doesn't, then they'll just simply they'll pretend the market just doesn't exist. Now, they could bring in plenty of broccoli from overseas, for example, They could go to other countries that have surplus supply, that can produce it much cheaper, or where it's available in surplus that can be bought cheaply in bulk. They could do it, but they don't. So they say, well, the market is Australia only, and that's the price you have to pay in Australia. All right, then, okay, let's accept that. The market is Australia, that's the price you have to pay in Australia. That's what happens in Australia. So the price of labour starts to go up. No, we have to bring the people from overseas. No, we have to bring in, no. The market's not Australia, the market's the world. The world is the market. And we have to bring in peasants, and we have to bring in everybody from overseas. We lobby the government or bribe the government or do whatever the fuck we got to do. Honey trap them with little skinny blonde babes or something. We'll get what we want. So suddenly the market is international, or it's Asia Pacific, or it's the whole world, or it's this or it's that. So they can contract and expand the definition, the geographical definition of the market at will, to say, well, when it comes to labour, the whole world is our supplier. Well, wait a minute, you just said that it was Australia only. Oh no, because that increases our profits if we say that. But when the cost inputs, the inputs of cost to us are increasing, cost of labour, for example, then we can say the whole world is our market. And so by playing this ridiculous game, and why governments, the elected representatives of the people, allow them to do this is quite beyond me. And if there is competition around the world, why is it that CEOs are being paid $10 million a year for sitting on top of an oligopoly when blind Freddie with an IQ of 10 million could make a profit in those sort of circumstances, and they're being paid because they only have to work for 1 year and they'll never have to work again? Why is it that these people are being paid this sort of money when they don't have to make any difficult business decisions at all? And the minute things get a little bit tight on the profit front, they just go and bring in a shitload of peasants from some third world country. Problem solved. Where is the managerial skill in that? I mean, I can't see it. So the reality is that market forces are not working. Everything is fixed, rigged, caballed. A price cartel, monopoly, oligopoly, and so on. Why is it that whenever the amount of houses or dwellings built in Australia increase, that at the same time the mass migration amount increases, which offsets or neutralises any benefit that may have come from having extra housing stock? Now, the housing lobby and all those things is very powerful in Australia, and they want to maintain a situation where real estate, residential real estate is artificially high. I mean, how is it allowed to get this way in the first place? Was because if it was domestic demand only, in other words, people had to, buying the houses from their 9-to-5 jobs, then the price of real estate would never have gone up. I mean, it would have gone up somewhat, I suppose, but hardly. There was a bit of a blip when the baby boomers started to come in to buy houses, and then they started to reduce the amount of deposit you had to buy a house, and this sort of thing. So there was a price increase there, but nothing on the scale that we've seen since mass migration kicked off. So the whole world was allowed to buy Australian residential real estate, which of course set the whole thing up. And when you say the whole world can buy it, they're not penniless peasants from somewhere. The richest people, wealthiest people in the world were all given access to Australian residential real estate, and they claim that the government talks tough about we're stopping all that, and we're putting but no, they're not. So the whole world is the buyer, but yet Australia, and there's just a fixed amount of real estate here, and so that artificially inflates the prices. Why aren't there competition for CEO jobs in Australia? Why aren't Indians that would work for a tenth of what the local CEOs are getting paid? Why is the job open to Indians, and then why aren't they being paid a tenth? Why is there such a huge emphasis on reducing workers' wages or by 10 cents an hour when the executive suite are increasing their pay by multi-millions a year? This sort of thing. So it's not market forces that are driving anything. In fact, you'd struggle to find market forces anywhere. Only in the air markets, if you can call it that unwanted by, or where there's no easy money by the cabals and the oligopolists and the monopolists. Only those are the places where there's any competition, and it's only because the bigger players can't be bothered with it. Wherever the big money is, big government expenditure, all this sort of stuff, where they can. For example, if you want to buy groceries in Australia, there's really only two places you've got to, or 2.5 places you've got to do it all around the country. So how much competition is there? If you look at the manufacturers, the number of manufacturers in each segment, whether it's, I don't know, breakfast cereal or wherever, there's still only like 2, 3, players in there, 4 at the most. And they all seem to have, very homogenized pricing. Again, you'd be hard pushed to say there was competition. Similarly, you've got the big chains, whether it be in supermarkets or any area, where they've got their centrally planned pricing, profit, and market, segment sort of positioning structures, and they want this product to fit in there, that product to fit in there. So they're pretty much dictating it based on what, and they have the power to do that. And I'm not saying that it's a good or a bad thing, but the reality is we've got to fess up here. These are not market forces, and only if market forces deliver windfall profits to the monopolists will they accept market forces. Everything else is arranged, prearranged, rigged, fixed, monopolized, oligopolized, and so on, cartel priced, whatever. But whenever they're faced with market forces they can't control, maybe a shortage of labor in a certain area, then they go into a mad panic and demand again that the government bring in lots of labor from overseas. So they want to contract and expand the market area in question in order to say, or in order to avoid and bypass market forces. And as soon as market forces appear, they haven't come along, that they haven't factored into their centrally planned bureaucratic equations, then they go into a fucking panic. Hey, we can't control this. We need to take control. Well, market forces mean you don't have control. Now, the quality of people that work, and I see this in particular, the quality of people that work in areas where there are no market forces. Because if market forces are applying, that means you've got to be better than the next guy to win. You've got to produce a better product. It's got to be a better product at a better price, or a better service, or all of the above. But when you don't have to face any of those things, you don't have to meet any of those competitive pressures, then the quality of the people you need just takes an absolute nosedive. You don't have to meet any, and so you need much lesser quality people, and they don't need to be on the ball. They don't have to be making sort of decisions about how to keep the customer happy or produce the better product, or they don't have to do that. They don't have to worry about it. It's irrelevant. If you want any, if your revenues are falling, you just go and bribe a politician or lobby some group and demand that you get a bigger monopoly, or you get cozier government contracts. So there's a vast difference in the amount of people, and for probably 3 generations of management now, certainly in the West, these competitive pressures from true competitive market economy have been declining to the point where now they're almost all gone. And what this means is the quality of management we have is diabolically bad, because, well, when I say bad, I mean, maybe they're good at filling out forms or something. I'm sure they've got some skill. Maybe they're good at not upsetting black lesbian activists. Maybe they've got some skill in that area. But when it comes to competitive, working in a competitive market and winning through having a better product, better service, better price, then we've lost generations of management that were capable of doing that. And that's to the detriment of all of us. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.